Raymond Johnson never expected his life to change the day he got that phone call. He was 48 years old, working as an electrician in Detroit, living a simple life with his wife and 2 teenage kids. The call came from a lawyer's office in Georgia, a place he'd only visited twice in his entire life. His grandfather had passed away at 93, and Raymond had attended the funeral 3 weeks earlier. Now this lawyer was telling him something that made no sense at first. His grandfather had left him land. Not a house. Not money, just land. 47 acres of it sitting somewhere outside Atlanta. Raymond didn't know what to think. His grandfather had been a quiet man who worked in a factory his whole life. He never seemed wealthy. Never talked about owning property. The lawyer explained that the land had been in the family since 1962. Raymond's great-grandfather had bought it with savings from decades of hard work, hoping to build something for future generations. But life got in the way. Money was always tight. The land just sat there year after year, passed down but never touched. 2 weeks later, Raymond drove down to Georgia to see this inheritance for himself. The lawyer's office gave him the property documents and directions. As he drove through the suburbs of Atlanta, he noticed how much the area had grown. New shopping centers lined the roads. Housing developments spread across former farmland. Everything looked clean and expensive. When he finally found his property, Raymond felt his heart sink a little. The land was completely overgrown. Wild grass reached his waist in some spots. Trees had taken over sections that should have been clear. An old rusted fence marked part of the boundary, but most of it had fallen down years ago. This wasn't the valuable treasure he'd imagined. It looked abandoned. Raymond walked the property line, pushing through the brush. That's when he noticed something odd. Fresh tire tracks cut through the grass near the back section. Wooden stakes with bright orange tape marked various spots across the land. Someone had been here recently. Someone had been measuring and surveying. He figured maybe they were looking at nearby properties. This area was clearly booming with development. His land probably sat next to some project that was coming soon. Raymond took photos with his phone, mostly to show his wife what they'd inherited. He couldn't imagine what they'd do with this place. Selling it seemed like the smart move, but first he needed to figure out what it was actually worth. Back in Detroit, Raymond contacted the county office in Georgia to update the property records. He sent them his grandfather's death certificate and the inheritance papers. The clerk was helpful, putting everything into the system under Raymond's name. The deed was official now. The land legally belonged to him, recorded in black and white in the county database. Over the next few weeks, Raymond researched property values in the area. He called a few real estate agents asking general questions about land sales. The numbers surprised him. Undeveloped land in that part of Georgia was selling for significant money. His 47 acres could be worth somewhere between $2 and $3 million. Maybe more if he found the right buyer. His wife Linda was excited but cautious. That kind of money could change everything for their family. Put both kids through college. Pay off the house. Give them security they'd never had. But she worried about scams and people trying to take advantage of them. They weren't business people. They didn't know the first thing about selling land. 3 months after inheriting the property, Raymond decided to drive back down to check on it again. He'd been thinking about listing it for sale, but wanted to see it one more time first. Maybe there were features he'd missed that could increase its value. A water source, certain trees, anything that might matter to a developer. What he found when he arrived made him pull over and stare in disbelief. His property wasn't empty anymore. Construction vehicles filled the land. A concrete mixing truck sat near what looked like fresh foundations. Workers in hard hats moved around the site. Someone was building something. Multiple buildings from what he could see. Raymond felt his stomach twist. He parked his truck and got out, walking toward the construction site. A chain-link fence had been erected around the work area. Signs posted on the fence announced a new commercial development project by the Riverside Meadows Homeowners Association. Grand opening planned for next fall. Retail spaces available for lease. A security guard approached him before he could get closer. "Can I help you, sir?" "What is this?" Raymond asked, pointing at the construction. "What are you building here?" "Commercial center," the guard said. 12 buildings. Shops, offices, restaurants. HOA finally got approval to develop this lot. Raymond's mind raced. "The HOA owns this land?" "That's what I was told," the guard shrugged. Been working this site for 2 months now. They're moving fast. Want it done before next summer? Raymond didn't argue with the guard. Instead, he walked back to his truck and pulled out the property deed from his glove compartment. His hands shook as he reviewed the boundaries. He compared them to the GPS location on his phone. There was no mistake. This construction site sat directly on his land. Every single building they were putting up belonged on property that he owned. He drove straight to a real estate attorney's office in the nearest town. The receptionist said they didn't take walk-ins, but Raymond insisted he'd wait. He sat in that lobby for 3 hours until an attorney named Patricia Chen agreed to see him. Raymond spread the documents across her desk. The deed, the county record showing his ownership, photos from his phone showing the construction. Patricia studied everything carefully, her expression growing more serious with each page she turned. "This is your property?" she asked. "You're certain?" "Completely certain," Raymond said. "My name is in the county system. I've got the deed, but they're building like they own it." Patricia leaned back in her chair. "How long have they been constructing?" The guard said 2 months. "But I think they've been planning this longer. There were survey markers on the land 4 months ago, and you didn't try to stop them." Raymond spread his hands. "I didn't know they were going to build. I just inherited this place. I'm still figuring out what to do with it." Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something Raymond didn't expect. "Don't stop them yet." "What?" "Let them keep building," she said. "Document everything. Take photos every week. Get copies of every permit they file. But don't stop the construction." Raymond thought she was crazy. "Why would I let them build on my land?" Patricia smiled slightly. "Because every dollar they invest makes your position stronger. Right now, if you stop them, they've lost maybe 200,000 or 300,000. They'll be angry, but they can walk away. But if you let them finish, if they complete 12 commercial buildings on your property, then they've invested millions and they have everything to lose." Raymond drove back to Detroit that night with his head spinning. He had land he barely understood, a HOA building on it illegally, and a lawyer telling him to let it happen. Nothing about this made sense. But one thing was clear. His quiet life had just become very complicated. Raymond couldn't sleep that first night after meeting with Patricia Chen. He kept thinking about those buildings going up on his land. Every logical part of his brain screamed that letting them continue was insane. But Patricia had been practicing real estate law for 23 years. She'd handled cases like this before. She knew what she was talking about. The next morning, he sat down with Linda at their kitchen table. He showed her everything. The deed, the photos, Patricia's business card. He explained the strategy of waiting and letting the construction finish. Linda stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "You're going to just watch them build on our property?" "Raymond, that's crazy." "I know how it sounds," he said. "But think about it. If we stop them now, we get what? An apology? Maybe a small payment? But if we wait until they're done, they'll have spent millions. They'll have to deal with us seriously." Linda shook her head. "What if they try to say we knew and didn't stop them? What if waiting makes it look like we gave permission?" "That's why we're documenting everything," Raymond explained. Patricia said to keep records of every visit, every photo, every conversation. "We're not giving permission. We're building a case." It took 3 more conversations before Linda agreed to trust the process. She made Raymond promise to follow Patricia's instructions exactly. No improvising. No confronting the HOA on his own. Everything by the book. The following Saturday, Raymond drove back to Georgia. This time he brought a better camera and a notebook. He parked on the public road near his property and photographed the construction from multiple angles. He wrote down the date, time, and what he observed. 3 cement trucks, a crane, at least 20 workers on site. The foundations for all 12 buildings were complete now. Framing had started on 4 of them. He did this every 2 weeks for the next 5 months. Each trip, the buildings grew taller. Walls went up. Roofs got installed. Windows appeared. Raymond filled an entire binder with photos and notes. He tracked the progress like he was documenting a crime scene. Because in a way he was. Patricia requested copies of all the building permits from the county. What they discovered made Raymond's blood boil. The HOA had filed for permits using fake ownership documents. They'd created papers claiming they'd purchased the land from a shell company. The signatures were forged. The notary stamps were bogus. Someone at the HOA had committed fraud to make this project happen. "This is bigger than we thought," Patricia told him during one of their meetings. This wasn't just a mistake or an honest error in a title search. Someone deliberately falsified documents. Can we prove it? Raymond asked. The county has everything on file. The fake deeds, the permit applications, all of it. When the time comes, this evidence will bury them. Raymond started researching the Riverside Meadows HOA. It was a large community of about 800 homes, mostly upper-middle-class families. The HOA president was a man named Douglas Westbrook, a former commercial real estate developer who'd made millions before retiring. Westbrook had been pushing for this commercial center for 3 years, according to old HOA meeting minutes Raymond found online. The whole project was Westbrook's baby. He'd convinced the HOA board that a commercial center next to their neighborhood would increase property values. He'd promised that rental income from the buildings would reduce HOA fees for residents. He'd pushed it through despite some homeowners objecting. Now Raymond understood why Westbrook had been so aggressive. The man had cut corners and broken laws to make his vision happen. Meanwhile, Raymond's regular life continued. He went to work every day, running electrical jobs around Detroit. His coworkers had no idea what was happening in Georgia. His kids didn't know their father was sitting on a potential fortune. Only Linda knew, and the secret was eating at her. When are you going to tell them? She asked one night, referring to the HOA. When the buildings are done, Raymond said. Patricia says we wait for the grand opening. Maximum impact. That's another year away. I know. Linda grabbed his hand. Are you sure about this? Really sure? Because once we do this, there's no going back. These people aren't going to just say sorry and walk away. Raymond thought about his grandfather, about how hard that man had worked his entire life, about how he'd held on to this land through decades of struggle, probably facing pressure to sell it cheap or lose it to taxes. His grandfather had protected this property, so his family would have something real, something valuable. And now some wealthy HOA president thought he could just take it? I'm sure, Raymond said. The hardest part was keeping quiet. Raymond's brother called one day asking about the inherited land. You sell that Georgia property yet? Still figuring out what to do with it, Raymond lied. Man, you should sell it fast before the market changes. Get that money while you can. Raymond wanted to tell him everything. About the buildings, the fraud, the massive case they were building. But Patricia had been clear. Tell nobody. The fewer people who knew, the better. By month 10, the construction was nearly complete. The buildings looked impressive. Modern design. Nice landscaping starting to go in, parking lots paved and striped. The HOA had spared no expense. Raymond estimated they'd invested at least $7 or $8 million. He attended a public HOA meeting in month 11, sitting quietly in the back row. Westbrook stood at the front, presenting updates on the commercial center. He showed architectural renderings. He announced that 6 businesses had already signed leases. A coffee shop, a dental office, a yoga studio, a restaurant, 2 law firms. The grand opening was scheduled for September 15th. This project represents the future of our community, Westbrook said proudly. We've created something that will benefit every homeowner here for decades to come. Raymond watched from his seat, saying nothing. He wanted to stand up right then and expose everything. But Patricia's voice echoed in his mind. Wait for the grand opening. Maximum leverage. After the meeting, Raymond approached the display table where they had brochures about the commercial center. He picked one up. The glossy pages showed beautiful photos of the buildings. Riverside Meadows Commercial Plaza, the cover read, a community investment in excellence. A woman at the table smiled at him. Are you interested in leasing space? Just curious, Raymond said. This is impressive. It really is, she beamed. Our HOA president worked so hard to make this happen. It's going to be wonderful for property values. Raymond nodded and left. He sat in his truck in the parking lot and called Patricia. I just attended their HOA meeting, he said. They're planning a huge grand opening. Press coverage, ribbon-cutting ceremony, the whole thing. Perfect, Patricia said. That's when we make our move. You sure about the timing? Trust me, Raymond. The bigger they celebrate, the harder they fall. And with the evidence we have, they're going to fall hard. Raymond drove back to Detroit that night feeling something he hadn't felt in months. Confidence. This was really going to work. His grandfather's land, the property that had sat unused for decades, was about to deliver justice in a way nobody expected. The waiting was almost over. September 15th arrived with perfect weather. Clear blue skies, temperature in the mid-70s, just enough breeze to make the banners flutter around the Riverside Meadows commercial plaza. Raymond sat in his truck 2 blocks away, watching the setup crew arrange chairs and test the sound system. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. Patricia Chen sat in the passenger seat, reviewing documents one final time. She had 3 folders prepared. One contained the original deed and all ownership records. Another held copies of the fraudulent permits and forged documents the HOA had filed. The third contained Raymond's documentation from the past 18 months. Photos, notes, everything organized chronologically. "You ready for this?" Patricia asked. Raymond took a deep breath. "I've been ready for over a year. Remember what we discussed. Stay calm no matter what happens. Let me handle the legal language. You're just there to establish that you're the owner. What if they get aggressive? They won't, not with cameras everywhere. Westbrook is too smart for that. He'll try to smooth talk us, promise to fix it quietly. Don't fall for it." They waited until the ceremony officially started. Cars filled the parking lot. Raymond counted at least 300 people. Local business owners, HOA members, families with kids. A news van from a local TV station set up near the stage. The mayor was there preparing to give remarks. At exactly 2 o'clock, Douglas Westbrook stepped up to the microphone. He wore an expensive suit and a smile that made Raymond's stomach turn. Westbrook thanked everyone for coming. He talked about vision and community partnership. He called the commercial plaza a triumph of planning and execution. "This project represents what we can achieve when we work together," Westbrook said into the microphone, "when we invest in our future. Today, we're not just opening buildings, we're opening opportunities." The crowd applauded. The mayor stepped forward to add his congratulations. He praised Westbrook and the HOA board for their leadership. He said this development would bring jobs and revenue to the community. Raymond felt sick watching it. All these people celebrating something built on stolen land. His family's legacy. Patricia checked her watch. "Let's give them 5 more minutes. Let them finish the speeches." Those 5 minutes felt like an hour. Finally, Westbrook held up oversized scissors for the ribbon cutting. The crowd counted down. 3, 2, 1. The ribbon fell away. Everyone cheered. "Now," Patricia said. They got out of the truck and walked toward the ceremony. Raymond carried a leather folder containing copies of his documents. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it in his ears. People milled around, heading into the buildings to tour the new spaces. Nobody paid attention to Raymond and Patricia as they approached the stage area. Westbrook stood near the podium, shaking hands and accepting congratulations. Raymond walked straight up to him. Patricia stayed 1 step behind. "Mr. Westbrook," Raymond said, "I need to speak with you." Westbrook turned with his politician smile still in place. "Certainly. Are you interested in leasing space? Let me introduce you to our property manager." "I don't want to lease space," Raymond said. "I own this property." The smile froze on Westbrook's face. "Excuse me?" Raymond handed him the folder. "My name is Raymond Johnson. This land belongs to me, since I inherited it from my grandfather 20 months ago. Every building you just opened is sitting on my property." Westbrook opened the folder. His face went pale as he scanned the first document. The deed, recorded with the county, showing Raymond as the legal owner. His hands started to shake slightly. "This must be some kind of mistake," Westbrook said, but his voice had lost its confidence. "Our title company cleared this property. We have documentation." Patricia stepped forward. "Your documentation is fraudulent. The deed you filed with the county was forged. The signatures are fake. The notary stamps don't match any registered notary in the state. We have evidence of everything." Other HOA board members noticed the conversation and moved closer. The property manager joined them. Someone asked what was going on. Westbrook held up a hand. "Let's not do this here. This is obviously a misunderstanding. Mr. Johnson, why don't we step inside and discuss this privately?" "No," Raymond said firmly. "We're not hiding this. You built 12 buildings on land you don't own. You used fake documents to get permits. That's not a misunderstanding. That's fraud." A woman from the local TV station noticed the commotion. She grabbed her cameraman and started walking over. Westbrook saw them coming and his expression turned desperate. "Please," he said quietly, "let's be reasonable about this. We can work something out." "You should have been reasonable before you stole my land," Raymond said. The reporter reached them with her microphone extended. "Is there a problem here?" Patricia turned to her smoothly. "Yes, actually. This commercial center was built entirely on private property, without the owner's permission. Mr. Johnson here is the legal owner, and the HOA never had rights to develop this land." The reporter's eyes widened. She immediately started asking questions. When did Raymond discover this? How did the HOA get permits? Had there been any attempt to contact the real owner? Other people gathered around now. News was spreading through the crowd fast. The celebration mood evaporated. Confused conversations broke out everywhere. HOA members looked shocked. Business owners who'd signed leases looked panicked. Westbrook tried to regain control. "Everyone, please. This is clearly a complex title issue. These things happen in real estate. Our legal team will sort it out. There's no need for alarm." "It's not complex," Patricia said loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "The county records clearly show Mr. Johnson as the property owner. They have since last year. Your HOA filed fraudulent ownership documents to obtain building permits. That's a crime, Mr. Westbrook." Someone in the crowd shouted, "Did we just invest in buildings on stolen land?" Another voice called out, "Where did our HOA fees go?" Westbrook's face flushed red. He pointed at Raymond. "This is extortion. You waited until we finished building. You let us spend millions. This is a setup." "I documented everything," Raymond said calmly. "Every visit to my property. Every photo. I have proof I tried to understand what was happening. Your security guard told me the HOA owned the land. I have that conversation recorded. You lied to everyone, including your own members." The mayor, who'd been standing to the side looking confused, finally spoke up. "Someone needs to explain what's happening here." "Douglas, is this true?" Westbrook opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He looked at the folder in his hands, then at the crowd, then at the buildings behind him. Raymond watched the realization hit him. Everything Westbrook had built, his grand achievement, it all stood on a foundation of lies that were now crumbling. "We need to call an emergency board meeting," one of the other board members said. Right now, the reporter was still filming, capturing everything. Raymond knew this story would be on the evening news. By tomorrow morning, it would probably be everywhere. Westbrook finally found his voice again. "Fine, yes, we'll meet immediately. Mr. Johnson, please just give us a chance to review your documents properly." "I'll be at Patricia Chen's office," Raymond said. "You know where to find me." As they walked back to the truck, Raymond could hear angry voices rising behind them. HOA members demanding answers. Business owners panicking about their leases. The whole celebration had turned into chaos. Patricia smiled slightly as they reached the truck. "That went well." Raymond let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding for 18 months. "What happens now?" Now they panic. They'll call their lawyers who will confirm everything we said is true. Then they'll realize they built $8 million worth of buildings on land they have no claim to. By tomorrow morning, they'll be begging to negotiate." Raymond looked back at the commercial plaza. His commercial plaza, technically. "I still can't believe we just did that." "Believe it," Patricia said. "You just won the first round. But the real fight is about to begin." The phone started ringing at 6:30 the next morning. Raymond ignored the first 3 calls from unknown Georgia numbers. On the 4th call, he answered. "Mr. Johnson, this is Howard Klein. I represent the Riverside Meadows HOA. We need to meet today to discuss this situation." "I'm in Detroit," Raymond said, "and I don't discuss anything without my attorney present." "Then bring your attorney. We'll cover your travel expenses. This needs to be resolved immediately." Raymond hung up and called Patricia. She'd already received 5 calls from various HOA lawyers. The news story had aired on 3 local stations the night before. By morning, it was trending on social media. The headlines were brutal. HOA builds $1 million complex on stolen land. Grand opening turns into legal nightmare. Black family's property taken for commercial development. That last headline hit different. Raymond hadn't thought much about race in all of this. But Patricia had warned him that people would connect this to a larger history. Black families losing land through fraud, legal tricks, and outright theft. It happened for generations across the South. Raymond's case was just one more example, except this time the owner had caught them. Patricia flew to Detroit that afternoon. They spent 3 hours in Raymond's living room, preparing for what came next. Linda sat with them asking questions, making sure they weren't missing anything. They're going to lowball you first, Patricia explained. Offer maybe $500,000. Call it a settlement for the confusion. They'll act like they're being generous. What do we say? Raymond asked. We say no. We don't negotiate against ourselves. They built on your land without permission. They owe you for the land value, the buildings they constructed, and damages for unlawful use of your property. Linda looked worried. What if they fight this for years? We can't afford a long legal battle. They can't either, Patricia said. Every day those buildings sit empty, they lose money. The businesses that signed leases are threatening to sue. The HOA members are furious. Westbrook is facing possible criminal charges. Time is on our side. 2 days later, Raymond and Patricia sat across from 5 lawyers in a conference room in Atlanta. The HOA's legal team looked exhausted. They'd clearly been working around the clock trying to find a way out of this mess. The lead attorney, Klein, started with apologies. Mr. Johnson, we want to acknowledge that serious errors were made. The HOA relied on a title search that was clearly inadequate. We take full responsibility. You did more than rely on a bad title search, Patricia interrupted. You filed forged documents with the county. That's fraud. Klein shifted uncomfortably. The individual responsible for those documents no longer represents the HOA. Douglas Westbrook has resigned as president. The board has initiated its own investigation into his conduct. Raymond almost felt bad for them. Almost. So, Westbrook did all this on his own? We're still determining exactly what happened, Klein said carefully. But regardless of how we got here, we need to find a resolution. The HOA is prepared to offer $500,000 to settle this matter. Patricia didn't even pretend to consider it. She slid a folder across the table. Here's an independent appraisal of the land. $3.2 million. Here's an assessment of the buildings you constructed. $8.4 million. Here's our calculation of fair market rent for unauthorized use of the property over 20 months. $400,000. Total damages we're seeking. $12 million. The room went silent. One of the younger lawyers actually laughed nervously before catching himself. Klein cleared his throat. That's not realistic. The HOA doesn't have $12 million. We'd have to assess every homeowner massive fees. People would lose their homes. That's not my client's problem, Patricia said. You built these buildings. You took out loans, hired contractors, signed leases. You did all of that on stolen property. The consequences of that decision belong to you. They argued for 2 more hours. The HOA's lawyers tried every angle. They claimed Raymond should have stopped construction sooner. They said his silence implied consent. They argued the buildings couldn't be removed, so the HOA should be allowed to keep them with minimal compensation. Patricia shot down every argument. She had documentation proving Raymond had tried to understand what was happening. She had evidence showing the HOA knew there were problems with the title, but proceeded anyway. She had witness statements from the security guard who told Raymond the HOA owned the land. Finally, Klein played what he clearly thought was his strongest card. If you push this too hard, Mr. Johnson, you'll destroy an entire community. 800 families depend on this HOA. Many of them are retirees on fixed incomes. They had nothing to do with Westbrook's decisions. Is that really what you want? Raymond had been quiet for most of the meeting, letting Patricia handle the legal arguments. But this question was directed at him personally. He leaned forward. Let me tell you about my grandfather, Raymond said. He bought that land in 1962 with money he saved working factory jobs. He held on to it through everything. Through times when keeping that property meant his family went without. He could have sold it dozens of times, probably should have. But he didn't, because he wanted to leave something for his children and grandchildren. The lawyers listened. My grandfather faced a system that made it almost impossible for black families to build wealth through property. Raymond continued. Banks wouldn't give him loans. Developers tried to cheat him. The government took land from people who looked like him through eminent domain and highway projects. But he held on to those 47 acres. And now, 60 years later, someone thought they could just take it, build on it like it was nothing. He paused. So don't talk to me about fairness. Don't tell me to consider the families in your HOA. Where was that consideration when Westbrook was forging documents? When he was spending their money building on land he knew was questionable? I'm not the one who hurt those 800 families. Your board president did that. The room stayed quiet for a long moment. Klein finally spoke, his voice more respectful now. What would you accept? Patricia answered. Full ownership of the buildings and property. $2 million in damages for unauthorized use and legal fees, and a public acknowledgement from the HOA of what happened here. We can't afford $2 million in cash, Klein said. Then we'll accept a structured payment plan, Patricia replied. Payments spread over time with interest, and a lien on the buildings to secure the debt. The negotiations continued for 3 more meetings over the next month. The HOA brought in their insurance company, but the insurer refused to cover anything, citing the fraud exemption in their policy. The board tried to argue the buildings should be sold to pay Raymond, but Patricia insisted Raymond should keep them. News coverage intensified. National media picked up the story. Legal experts were interviewed about property rights and the history of black land loss. Some praised Raymond for fighting back. Others criticized him for not stopping construction sooner. He tried to ignore it all. The hardest part was the personal attacks. Someone posted Raymond's address online. He got threatening messages on social media. People called him greedy, accused him of playing the race card, said he was destroying a community for money. Linda wanted him to just take whatever settlement they offered and be done with it. His kids were getting harassed at school. His boss was getting uncomfortable with all the attention, but Raymond kept thinking about his grandfather, about all the families who'd lost land and had no way to fight back. This wasn't just about money anymore. Patricia called on a Wednesday afternoon in November. They've agreed to our terms. Full ownership of the property and buildings, $1.8 million in damages paid over 5 years, and they'll issue a public statement acknowledging the wrongdoing. Raymond sat down heavily. After all these months, it was finally over. There's one more thing, Patricia said. Westbrook is being charged with fraud and forgery. The district attorney wants to know if you'll testify. Raymond thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. Yes, I'll testify.